Welcome everybody to 3 Count Commentaries. I am MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about Austin Theory. And Meltzer and Alvarez, they don't like Austin Theory. They don't like him. And so we're going to play some audio from Wrestling Observer newsletter, which is like 3 minutes of these guys eviscerating Austin Theory. And I'm going to address this because if we know anything about Meltzer and Alvarez, we know that these two guys have no eye for talent. Neither one of them do. And so this actually is not a bad thing for Austin Theory. It's a bad thing in so much as they have tremendous amounts of influence and they can influence other people's opinions. But in terms of his actual upside, this is the best for him because these guys have been wrong so many times. But let's just play the audio. So I'm going to play it all the way through. So let's go.
I mean, the story of the show was Austin Theory. And, I mean, as far as, like, and I don't know, like, when it was over, I wasn't...
He's Austin Theory, dude.
Yeah, I wasn't...
That's the problem.
I wasn't... I mean, it was like he's there. He's a guy.
The only difference is he shaved his head. He wrestles the same way. It's the Vince McMahon 2003, big jacked up guy, very simple matches. He's sitting there doing chin locks. I'm like, oh my God. This guy came from Evolve, in 2019. And, people were talking about, this guy's a future main eventer. He does all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. They hire him. They teach him how to work.
Okay.
He does exactly what Vince loves to see. Big guy, go slow, heel. It's just no one wants to see that in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But when he was in
Evolve, promos aren't great. His wrestling's just there.
Yeah, I was not blown away by him. His charisma is not off the charts. He's going to get a push. So, I mean, sometimes if you're lucky and things are hot, that's all you need, but not always. But, I mean, the thing with him, when he was in Evolve, he didn't do any big moves. The reason he had that rep in Evolve was because he was tall and had a good body and was good looking. That's what everyone saw in him. I mean, when he was in Evolve, he was working, when I saw him in Evolve, it was the guy doesn't really have above average charisma. He has a really good look. He's a look that they'll want. And his wrestling was, below the Evolve level. But he was the only guy in Evolve where you look at him and go oh, he can be a WWE star. He had that look. And at that time, back then, I mean, that was the key because it was a looks business. And it's still, to a degree, a looks business. And that's why a guy like him will get chance after chance. And, because of, he will get chance. And this is another one. I mean, he's been around for years. He's not gotten over to that level, to the main event level, or even to the mid-card level, really. But he still beat John Cena at WrestleMania. Because a guy like that will get chance after chance, and this is his latest chance. And someday, is he going to get over? Maybe. Sometimes it takes, guys figure it out. They're right place at the right time. Company goes up, and you're in the main events. All of a sudden, you become a legend. I mean, it's not that different from all the times Cena didn't make it at first. Although Cena had way, way, way more natural charisma. That was the one thing. But Theory is probably a better wrestler than Cena was. At the same stage. But I'm not. He ain't gonna be Cena. Don't get me wrong. But
all right. Wow. They put a lot of dirt on this young 28-year-old guy. Now, these are the same people who they've called Roman a failure. They've called Cena a failure. They trash-talked Randy Orton. They consistently trash-talk Randy Orton. And the kinds of people that they have been building up over the last couple of years has been Hook, Daniel Garcia, Speedball Mike Bailey, Orange Cassidy. Just look at the times they have been wrong. Now, sometimes they're right. Sometimes, a broken clock can be right a couple of times. But comparing Austin Theory to Chris Masters is insane. That's insane. To support my point, I want to go to a summary of a Wrestling Observer newsletter column. All right, so God bless this guy, but it is a Redditor. He has a copy of several Wrestling Observer newsletters, and he kind of summarizes some of the subjects. He doesn't just post the whole thing. He just kind of does like a summary, so to remind everybody of what was going on at the time and some of the stories therein. And we go back to May of 2024, May 24th, 2024. And this is what's being said about John Cena. It says, there seems to be some backlash against John Cena within the company due to his in-ring work. Not that long ago, people were praising him as the guy who was going to deliver WWE back to the promised land because he's the only character they had that was connecting with fans. But a lot of the older veterans in the locker room have criticized his in-ring work, saying it's not up to the main event standards, which is true, Dave says. But that's because Cena, like so many other people, was brought up from developmental before he was ready. But a lot of his biggest supporters are frustrated that his in-ring work hasn't improved like they think it should, and say it's because they don't think he's working hard enough at learning that aspect of it. They say that Cena believes he's so over already that he only needs to keep doing what he's doing. As a result, he's working short matches on house shows to keep from exposing him. And then as the Redditor, he adds in a little bit of opining by saying, imagine living in a time when people were claiming John Cena didn't work hard enough at something. Now, I want you to really consider this. John Cena had been in WWE about a year and a half, because he was there for pretty much all of 2003, and I think he came in like mid-2002. 2002. John Cena was 27 years old. Think about that for a second. He was being criticized for his in-ring work. Dave Meltzer agreed, and he was 27 years old. 27 years old. And Austin Theory is currently 28. So, it wasn't just that. Going back to Reddit, a gentleman posted a 11-year-old Dave Meltzer column about Roman Reigns. Now, this was 2015, by the way. So Roman Reigns was 30 years old. And what has occurred, this is the context of this situation. Roman Reigns has beaten Daniel Bryan, who the fans say that they love so much, at Fastlane, which is the event before WrestleMania. So this is February of 2015, right? And Dave Meltzer is going to basically say, well, Vince is just going to keep doing what he does with Roman Reigns. So he basically says, and he likens Roman Reigns to being the next Lex Luger. I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's entirely too long. But let's go into some of the quotes here. He says, what's notable is that 21 years ago, a younger Vince McMahon was in the same position, choosing between his own hand-picked next star of the company, tall bodybuilder Lex Luger, or one of the best in-ring performers of the time, Bret Hart. Historically, Luger was far closer to what McMahon liked his champions to look like, but Hart was more popular among the fans. Faced with the crowd's reaction in the laboratory setting of a big show, the fans liked Hart more than Luger when they squared off. The WrestleMania original plan, Luger beating Yokozuna to win the title, was changed to Hart. Luger's momentum was lost, and a little over 2 years later, working as part of a mid-card tag team, he was walked out of the company. And he later says McMahon went with the original plan. He said this time McMahon went with the original plan. It was acknowledged that Reigns wasn't over like he should have been, so they went to work. They brought in his cousin Dwayne Johnson to make his Royal Rumble win even bigger. But then the miscalculation of putting Bryan in the Rumble made the whole scenario backfire, and even the endorsement of the Johnson didn't work. The next idea was to change the original plan for Fastlane to put Reigns versus Bryan. There were a lot of ways to go, but the key is that they probably have a great match. In the final scripting, it was Reigns winning clean and Bryan the next day out there with the idea he's the representative of his fan base, telling him to cheer Reigns onto victory because he was better man and we were all wrong and he deserved our respect. Not only that, they were put together in a tag team the next day and Reigns ever so graciously allowed Bryan to get the win, even though he did the work to set up the pin. So basically you see the snark in this thing, right? So he continues by saying he'd rather somebody rate the book from start to finish than to leave readers with no real understanding of how the book's writing and trying to force changes so that the little sidekick who is supposed to be a bit player gets the girl and not the handsome lead who was the whole book was built around. So he's basically saying you booked this situation in which Roman Reigns was going to be the top guy, so he might as well be the top guy, which is correct. You don't cut it off in the middle. So then he goes off into a jaunt about Paul Bosch and Houston and a bunch of stuff we don't care about. That's not relevant to us right now. And then he says, over the years, this is Dave Meltzer again, Vince McMahon has handpicked a number of champions with the idea they'd be big face of the company. Hulk Hogan was a big success. Ultimate Warrior seemed like he had all the momentum in the world, but as soon as he got the title, it didn't work. Later on, he says, I don't think McMahon at that point saw Bret Hart as a more of a bridge, a temporary thing until the next big thing came along. That pick was Lex Luger. That was blown on timing. Then he says the next pick was Kevin Nash. He was the biggest of all, talked well, was good looking. But business was terrible during that period, and Nash was clearly not the answer as the focal point. Nash wasn't at the level of Hart or Michaels, the other two top stars inside the ring. I'm skipping ahead. He said then Michaels was also not a success. Then Bret Hart, but McMahon got buyer's remorse on the contract. Then came Steve Austin, who carried the company during its most successful period. Dwayne Johnson came up during the Austin era and carried things when Austin was injured. The golden period ended due to two factors. They made the huge mistake of turning Austin heel, and Johnson showed so much charisma in wrestling that Hollywood called. And he had far more acting range than Hogan, and he was wrestling less and less. Then, of course, he says that things sunk under Triple H, which is fact. Then the handpicked successor was Brock Lesnar. Lesnar was the best athlete and toughest guy ever put into that position. But he wasn't strong on the promos. He was put with Paul Heyman and a pairing that worked, but the two were broken up and Lesnar turned face too early, then turned back. The company also suffered from Johnson appearing less and less frequently and Austin retiring. Eventually, the decision was made that Lesnar wasn't the guy and he quit the promotion. Randy Orton was next. He had a long string as a main eventer. Was a very good wrestler with the right look. Orton had a 5-year run where he statistically did well above usual business when he was on top, but he did not have the charisma to be a real mover as the top guy. He was still always kept strong because he had the right look and skill set. Actually, Dave Bautista surpassed Randy Orton in fans' eyes as a business mover. Bautista was a huge success with his face turn in 2005. He was a big guy with a great physique and a good look and was reasonably good in the ring, far from the best, but certainly when in with the best could be in a quality main event. And then, so basically he's giving you the rundown of all of these guys who were picked as the guy and how it turned out. That's essentially what he's doing here. So where does this leave Roman Reigns? So after he wrote just countless paragraphs about poor Daniel Bryan being left in the wind, he even compared Daniel Bryan to Chris Benoit after he lost the world title. But he says this about Roman Reigns. He says, as for Reigns, what we know is that the endorsement tricks with Dwayne Johnson and Bryan won't save the experiment. We learned that every time Johnson tried to put over Cena verbally and people turned on him, but at least with Cena, his segments drew the highest numbers most of the time. His merchandise blew away the field. He's raised ticket prices for shows, and he's consistently outsell anyone else. The mixed reactions were great evidence for people who understood little about the business, since Cena, while not Austin, Hogan, or San Martino, still laid golden eggs better than all of the few wrestlers in company history. The difference with Cena is people passionately loved him and hated him. Reigns is more than people just don't care all that much either way about him. Yeah, they really hated him as the anti-Bryan, but now that he's not that, they don't really like him all that much. And they don't hate him all that much. He's a cold guy going against a heel that people want to like in Lesnar. That was his formulation. People don't like Roman. They don't hate Roman. He's a cold guy. That's not my memory of Roman Reigns in 2015. I didn't have the memory of people were cold on him. I remember people booing him quite a bit. Now, it's almost as if the people who are running the companies know what they're doing. It's almost like the people who, well, I'm not sure about Triple H, but I'm pretty sure that old man knew what he was doing. Pretty sure. The guy that he wanted on top ended up on top. He knows what he's doing. And if the guy who used to run this thing, if the guy that he wanted on top ends up on top again, well, I think at that point, we know what the secret sauce is. But Austin Theory, I'm not going to, even though I'm comparing him to Roman and Randy Orton and all these guys, it's not a guarantee because it doesn't always work out the way that we'd hoped. So this is good for Austin Theory because we see how they have the fans, the smarks, because these are the people who hated Roman Reigns. We see how the smarks and the dirt sheets and all these guys hated John Cena and hated Roman, and they hated Batista too. They talked well about Batista, but they hated him too. And guys like Sid and Warrior and all this. Now, he could end up like those guys. Or he could end up like Chris Masters. But at 28, I don't think it's set in stone yet. Really, if you look at Austin Theory's career thus far, a lot of it has been stop-start, which of course happens a lot when it comes to young talent. But when he was pushed consistently, which was the 2021-22 time, he was over. So I forget which one of them said it. They said he wasn't over. It's a lie, you know? I mean, he was over right before they turned him heel this time in May without him doing much of anything except standing next to Grayson Waller, who was doing all the talking, by the way. Austin Theory had gotten over to the point where the crowd was chanting for him as a babyface. The crowd wanted him to turn babyface. But let these people tell it. The folks that you pay to listen to. This it didn't happen. He's not over. He doesn't have any charisma. He doesn't have a personality. All he does is chin locks. This is their consistent critique is based solely on how many moves a guy does. Whether a guy has quote-unquote sick matches. In WWE, guys are not going to powerbomb each other on the ring aprons. I know Kevin Owens does that stuff. I know that, guys like Sami Zayn will do it. But most guys are not powerbombing each other on ring aprons. They're not dumping each other on their heads. There's not going to be an excessive amount of kickouts. And there's not going to be a bunch of flips, outside of a guy like a Javon Evans or whatever. The fact that they are going after Austin Theory so strongly makes me believe he's going to be a big star, man. It truly does, because they have been so wrong. I remember I was there when they were absent, and it wasn't just them at the time either. It was PW Insider. It was a bunch of other sites as well that was absolutely just taking John Cena and raking him over a cheese grater every single week. It was constant. Once the push became obvious and that he was going to be their next guy, they did everything in their power. The entire wrestling internet marshaled all of their forces to tell you that John Cena was a failure. He couldn't work. The only thing he could do was throw clotheslines and make vulgar jokes. They did everything that they could to tear. Meltzer personally, of course, went years calling the Ultimate Warrior trash, calling Sid Justice trash, and these are guys who got over huge in front of audiences, because they didn't go out there to have sick matches. They had character. They had really good promo styles, and people was into the gimmick. But Meltzer, he thinks he knows everything. So the guy who's been wrong so many times. I mean, and we all know what happened with Roman. Roman Reigns is the most obvious, and the most, not only obvious, but the most recent. They have preached for years that Roman was a failed babyface, even though he was selling a ton of merchandise. And this was proven. I did a short about this, where every year of his singles push, he was a top merchandise seller, or, either top 1 to top 3 merchandise seller. But these guys have this bias towards in-ring wrestling, that's all that they care about. It's literally, that's it. They think that as long as you go out there and have quote unquote sick matches, you can be a big star. It's like Mike Bailey is never going to be a star. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. Because look is part of it. Look is part of the business. These guys hate Randy Orton. I'll never forget when I did that review of Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. I forget which year, but I never forget looking into the breakdown of it. Somebody was kind enough to post a breakdown. And I believe it was the year that the Young Bucks went in. And you look at the breakdown of who voted for each talent. And Randy Orton didn't get voted in. He wasn't even in the top 15, I don't think. But he got the most votes when it came to legends, veteran pro wrestlers, people who had been in the business for a long time. Orton is considered a great by wrestling fans all across the board, with the exception of these people who listen to Meltzer. And these people who listen to Meltzer, they have a great amount of influence. They have their own little podcasts, and they have their own YouTube channels, etc. And they just propagate the opinions of Meltzer, and they utilize cage match and all that kind of stuff to push their opinions and their propaganda. But when you look at who voted for Randy Orton, overwhelmingly, it was veteran wrestlers. When you look at who voted for, like, the Young Bucks, it was overwhelmingly journalists. That tells me right then and there that the journalist class of wrestlers, the journalist class of wrestling fans, have a very different opinion of what a good wrestler is than a wrestler who actually has wrestled. A wrestler who has actually wrestled preferred Randy Orton. The journalists who have never wrestled preferred the Young Bucks. And then we see that the Young Bucks are the ones who got into the Hall of Fame, which tells you that there are more journalists listening to this kind of shit than there are active and veteran wrestlers. So when you see people like Britt Baker going out there bleeding buckets, I hope I get 5 stars from Meltzer, this is why. This is why. These guys have been the tastemakers for so many years. Many, many years. They have pushed so many guys as the next big thing. They have attacked so many other guys. They're failures, they're never going to get over, yada, 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 and they've been wrong. They've been wrong. These are the same people who tried to get you to believe that Zack Sabre Jr. was this fantastic pro wrestler. Zack Sabre Jr. is the guy who's killing Japan right now. Smothered Japan in its crib. Well, I can't even say its crib because New Japan's like 25 years old. It's like 40 years old, actually. So, like in the old folks' home, they've got the old ether around the towel gimmick on New Japan. And they'll tell you constantly, all of these guys are the best wrestlers in the world. Oh, they're so fantastic. When they come to the United States, they don't draw. They don't draw. They barely draw in Europe. Guys like Will Ospreay, they'll tell you, oh, he's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, 52 5-star matches or whatever, in front of half-empty buildings. It's sad that we keep saying this stuff, but it keeps being true. The truth doesn't really change. These guys, their opinions on the business is so wrong that I cannot believe people still listen to them. But this is the best thing that happened to Austin Theory, because now he doesn't have to worry about pleasing the journalist class. They hate him. Good. Focus on the audience, the people who are paying to see you. And Triple H has to meet the audience where they are, meaning that I think a lot of the people in the crowd, they want to like Austin Theory. They want him as a babyface. That's really where they should go with it. Don't worry about having banger matches, which is the stupidest fucking thing in the world. Because you can have a better match, but not have the same connection with the audience. And that's what you should be working on. So, this is the best thing to happen to Austin Theory in a long time. These guys have been so wrong that he's in good company. He's in company with Cena, Orton, Brock, Roman, and so many others that these guys have been wrong about. So, he should not look at this as a negative thing. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
Yeah. We're just gonna